welcome to my channel, Valentina's Watching. Today we're doing something a little different. We're not actually watching anything. Today is going to be a commentary on a movie we watched a couple of days ago in theaters, Sonic 3. Now we did do a short reaction at the actual movie theater to express our excitement after watching the movie. It was originally my intention to possibly wait until it came on a streaming service to react to it at home, but we do have a tradition in the family of watching these movies in theaters. We watched the first and the second one in theaters, so we were like, we kind of have to watch the third one in theaters, and we were so excited with the trailer, and it looked amazing, so we're like, we have to watch this on a big screen. So we went to watch it on an IMAX screen, and I gotta say it was worth every penny. From start to finish, the movie, here's the non-spoiler section, I guess. From start to finish, the movie was pure excitement. I enjoyed the pacing. There were moments where it slowed down a little bit. I'll get into that a little bit more during the spoiler part. But in general, the pacing of the movie, I thought, was really great. I mean, from the very first 5 minutes that you're in the movie, you're like, okay, this is a ride that you're starting on that's like, it's going to be crazy. So,
in general,
In
general, I would say it's the best of the three so far. Which is saying a lot, because one was pretty good and two was really good,
better,
in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, this one was just super exciting. The involvement of everyone in the cast. The return of Jim Carrey as Eggman, amazing. This is not spoiler. Everybody knows he was playing the grandfather as well, Gerald, and Keanu Reeves as the voice of Shadow. He was a fan favorite. Everybody wanted him as the voice of Shadow. He did an amazing job. I thought, he put a lot of emotion in different portions that he needed to. We'll get into that a little bit later. The guy that played Stone, I felt like he stood out in this movie a little bit more too. He had some really great moments.
One thing I want to say about Shadow, is at first, I didn't really picture Keanu Reeves being able to voice him well. Keanu Reeves wasn't really the first person that came to my mind, I guess, when I thought about Shadow's voice. I was wondering why, everyone thought he'd be so perfect for it. He actually did a very good job.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, we all enjoyed it. We were a party of 5, and I feel like everyone came out of the theater super happy. If you do get a chance to watch it in theaters, it is visually a great movie. They do go to different locations, and it looks amazing. The CG aspect, I felt like they upgraded this movie too. It's just so much better in all aspects, in character development, in pacing, in storyline, in visuals. It is worth it if you can to go to a theater. As much as this is a reaction channel and I do it via streaming at home, I do encourage people to go to the movie theaters because it is a genuine experience and a fun experience to go with friends or family, or even by yourself, just to be sitting in a huge room watching, a movie you were looking forward to on a gigantic screen with great sound. And sometimes reacting to other people's reactions is quite fun. So our audience, there were a lot of little kids in the audience, but we had a kid behind us who was definitely a gamer, because I'll talk about that more because there's some credit scenes that we do need to talk about. Those of you who've seen the movie already, you know what I'm talking about. So the little boy behind us was a gamer.
We can save that for the end.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He was a gamer, so he was going wild behind us about some stuff. But anyway, guys, that is the non-spoiler part. Now we're going to get into the spoiler section. You have been warned, so if you have not watched the movie and you don't want to get anything spoiled, and you've been staying away from media and spoilers like we did, because it was really hard for a whole month to stay away from Sonic 3 Revelations, just cut off right here. All right? I won't be mad. So anyway, 3, 2, 1. All right. Spoiler part.
So, two things I wanted to say. Basically, a lot of people that went to see the movie know, like, this movie was mainly covering Sonic Adventure 2. That's the sort of storyline where Shadow was introduced.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it a lot of justice. The the very first scene with Shadow, like, breaking out of the lab and, like, going crazy on all the guards, like, one thing they did very well
Mm-hmm.
is that they managed to accurately show, like, how powerful Shadow should be, I guess. Like,
Fast. Wow.
the power scaling made a lot of sense. With him, like, teleporting all over the place and everything.
Yeah, I was amazed at how fast he was. You know, like Sonic kept saying, "I'm the fastest, being alive," and then in comes Shadow, and he just
And then him being
destroys everything.
powerful enough to defeat, like, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, like, all at once.
All at once, yeah. Those beginning scenes. I haven't played the Sonic games. You know, I was a gamer for a while, and of course I was familiar with Sonic, but I didn't. Growing up, I wasn't able to get my hands on a Sonic game that often, and I just didn't get into that. I was more of a Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Street Fighter type. I loved the fighting games when I was younger. But
I feel like
my kids, they played Sonic a lot, and you guys are into the lore a lot more than I am. So.
Even there are some things that I feel like even I might not have picked up on, little Easter eggs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
the music you told me was great too. That aspect too, the music. There were a lot of music cues for anyone who has a keen ear and has played like the games. They paid homage to a lot of games. They had little melodies and cues in between. I was watching this other video. I think the conversation that the three of them had when they were chained up and they talked to Tom and his wife. I forget the lady's name. What was his wife's name?
I forget too.
Yeah. Oh God, sorry. Maddie. Tom and Maddie, when they speak to them, there's a music cue behind, like while they're talking. There's a game, and say in the comments, guys, because I don't know what game that is. I don't know if Adar knows, but they played a melody of one of the games there.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And then he also said that famous line when he was jumping out of the helicopter.
Yeah, the line from the beginning of Sonic Adventure 2 where he, like, jumps out the helicopter, like, talk about a low budget plane.
Yeah, no movies, no snacks or anything. Yeah. He jumps out, and that's something he says in a game. I thought it was really cute.
I was happy they included that. That was nice.
Yeah, and
one of the things that I like too is you can tell that as a team, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are still, like, new to the concept of working together because they don't really get together, the three of them, until, like, the end of 2. So there's, especially Sonic, is still trying to get used to, like, not doing everything on his own and having other people that he has to work with.
I feel that Knuckles and Tails somewhat taught him that a little bit towards the end, right?
That I feel is like an important theme in this movie because if he keeps trying to do things alone, like there's a thin line between him and Shadow.
And he has moments too where he even needs Tom and Maddie, and their family connection is really beautiful too, and they do feel like a family, all 5 of them. And I feel like that's something very beautiful that they bring to Shadow because, he lost Maria. I'm going to get into that. And he felt like he lost his family. And the only thing that Grandpops taught him, I forget what his name is, Gerald? Gerald taught him hatred and revenge. He was just out to destroy everything when he lost Maria. So much to the point where he didn't really care about Ivo, who was also his grandchild. So him teaching him family and that you can move on in a positive way when you lose someone, and it's not always something you can fix when you lose someone. Like, death is permanent, unfortunately, but you can hold on to the memory and the good moments and the love that you had for that person, and that can get you through it. I thought that message was really beautiful.
Yeah. I feel like everyone like gets their chance to shine in this movie
Yeah.
too. Like
And the
Tails
little
and
girl that
Knuckles.
played Maria too. Like,
Tails
she
and
didn't-
Knuckles never felt like overshadowed by Sonic or anything.
Right. The little girl that played Maria too, I'm not familiar with the actress's name. I don't think I've ever seen her in anything before. If you guys know what she's worked on before, please let me know. I thought she was brilliant because she didn't have that many scenes. They were kind of like short moments in the flashbacks, but she did.
I want to talk like a little more deeply about that later.
Yeah, but I felt like she held a lot of emotional weight in her connection, even though they had to express all of that very quickly. She held a lot of emotion, and the connection between her and Shadow, I felt, was real. You know, like them playing around and connecting with each other. That moment that they had under the stars. Those are the moments where I felt Keanu's voice really shined. And you know, I know some people say Keanu's acting chops are questionable, but I felt like he really had some really interesting inflections in his voice. And yes, he did do the typical John Wick Neo inflections when he was talking, you know, in his rough, low voice and like combating the team, right, the Sonic team. But those moments that he had with Maria were really emotional and special. And I felt, you know, the frustration and the pain, but also the love that was coming through his voice for Maria. You know, so I felt that he did like a really great job with that, and I'll let you talk about the Maria thing now because then I want to get into Robotnik's.
The way they handled the whole thing with Maria was surprisingly mature.
Mm.
I have heard that this movie like feels a little bit less like a kids movie than the first two did.
Mm.
And I definitely saw that, and that's kind of inevitable considering how dark Shadow's backstory is.
But it was also tactful.
That it's his best friend, a child, being murdered essentially.
Right, because doesn't the guy like shoot her?
The way they did it was a little different because in the games and in the anime too, Sonic X.
Mm-hmm.
Because they also adapt that part,
mm-hmm.
that arc, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
She is shot directly. She's shot and killed while trying to help Shadow escape. They did that differently.
And he shot the container instead of shooting at her directly, which I thought was really tactful because he did use a gun still, but it was like he was shooting at her, but the doctor like tried to stop him, so the bullet went to the container. Was the actual explosion
that blew up, and it was an explosion.
Right, because I think it would have been traumatic. Like I said, we had a lot of little kids in our audience. They would have probably been traumatized by a soldier just shooting a kid directly with a gun. And given that there's, you know, especially here in the U.S., there's a lot of school shootings and a lot of violence, I think that was really well done.
I was expecting them to tone that down a bit with it being a movie targeted.
But it was still effective, no?
Yeah, like what was targeted towards kids like in the 2000s, like especially in Japan, since Sonic is a Japanese video game franchise,
mm-hmm.
was quite different from like what's aimed at kids now in the U.S. especially.
25 years later, it's very different.
So. Yeah, that's a change.
Yeah, in the early 2000s, we dealt with a lot more stuff.
It's a change that I saw coming, and that I don't really mind because still they got the message across. Like she was killed wrongfully,
and they still gave Sonic a gun too, and a bike. I mean, Shadow.
They gave Shadow a gun, but it's like a ray gun. Basically.
Yeah,
it doesn't have like actual bullets.
Like you guys said, at some point he has like an AK-47 or something.
I do like that. They gave him like the bike and everything.
Yeah. Although he kind of doesn't need one with his speed, but it's still cool to see him on the back of the bike, and
the way he moves too with the skates, like he does in the game, is like cool.
Yeah, the details. I kept saying the details in their eyes. You know how, like the eyeball texture. You could see the eyeball texture in the veins, and then their fur. They just look so amazing. I can't say enough wonderful things about the CG and the voice acting. Like really, Ben, the guy that does the voice for Sonic, he's really great too. You know, he has some really warm tones to his voice. You know, when he was outside of those moments where Sonic is fighting and speeding, and you know the jumpy, like childish kind of tone that he has to his voice, he had some really sweet moments also. Like just in general, the voice acting and the person who does Tails.
Yeah.
We still kind of want that person to do the voice for Chopper in the live action, but whoever that voice actor is, I'm probably going to put it in the description, but yeah, they were amazing. And I want to touch up a little bit on Jim Carrey and his robotics. Like, even though he was playing both of the characters at the same time, I felt a clear difference between Ivo and Gerald. You knew it was Jim Carrey, but there were sometimes moments where I forgot, and I was like, in my head, I was like, that's just his grandfather. It's two different dudes. And Jim Carrey just has that ability to just lose himself in his characters and just become these other people. And that dance moment, I was jamming. You know, the music, like I downloaded the soundtrack because the music, that moment when they do the laser dance was just so funny. I busted out laughing. I loved that moment. I felt like he genuinely had this relationship, even though it was with himself. There was a clear relationship between the grandson and the grandfather, and how he was seeking affection and approval constantly from him. And in the end, this guy really didn't give two shits. He was just all about destroying everything.
I like, too, that was one of the things they point out is how, like, obscenely old Gerald is by that point.
Yeah.
He's about 110. And I think he actually comments on it. He's like, I look pretty good for 110.
Yeah, and then he has that fourth wall moment. So like, oh, the same actor playing the same two different people, and he kind of looks at the camera. I thought that was really cool.
His grandson is middle-aged.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
He's quite
That's
old.
why he says it's impossible. But, you know, they also gave him, like, apparently, like, the old school suit.
Yeah.
And they gave him like the Potbelly space, which is, you know, very much like the game. And I thought
I love that they gave them the suits finally, like Eggman, because that's something people were complaining about before in 1 and 2. Is that Eggman, like, he had the mustache and the goggles, but he didn't have the actual suit.
And didn't you say Jim actually shaved his head this time?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, you know, also like the guy that played Stone, that's what I was going to say. I felt like he had, you know, more time to like express his relationship and his attachment to Eggman. You know, he's like, I already lost you, like almost lost you once before. I don't want to lose you again.
That's one thing, like, I have to say too about
like he even had his moment. You know?
About like human characters in general in these movies. I feel like, I don't know, in 1 and 2, even though there were more human characters, because 3 does have less,
they were kind of
it has less
right?
people. They were overshadowed for the most part by
no pun intended with shadow.
the overarching like plots of those movies. Like they were more of like a B plot or even C plot thing.
This time they felt important. They felt like really
although
good.
they had like fewer scenes here, the scenes they had felt more meaningful.
Right?
And more important.
You know that moment when Tom and Maddie go to the computer room and they do that whole thing with the USB? That was a really cool moment because that's like totally something for like a 90s kid. That moment when they blow in the USB, I thought it was so funny because that's something everybody did when they had like USBs or still, you know, I still blow into shit. I just did that with my SD card. But, you know, whenever you had like a game system and it failed or something, the first thing you would do was like pull out the cartridge and blow into it. So it was a nice touch, and she goes, you know, Maddie goes, yeah, the 90s is the best, you know. They had like cool little moments like that. I thought they had really cool.
Maybe like, I don't know, like I'm just estimating like 6 or 7 minutes of screen time.
But they were good, right?
But they made good use of them. And 2, like one of the things that I've heard a lot of people complain about is the whole like marriage subplot with like the humans and everything, like the B plot basically, like while the whole thing with the Master Emerald and Knuckles, like the main plot is going on. And it just felt like a bit too much, like it didn't really contribute that much to anything. And the first movie, I've heard some people think there's like too much human involvement, but
it seems like now they had a balance.
I guess that makes sense because really the only non-human character who's like
Sonic,
really involved in the first one is Sonic himself, so that was kind of inevitable.
Now, talking about that, about adding more characters that are CG, we gotta start talking about those credit scenes.
We can talk about that.
You want to talk about that later?
One thing I want to talk about is the whole basically like ending like sequence of the movie. Like many people are very familiar with the whole like final stretch of Sonic Adventure 2 towards the end of that game, with Gerald's whole like plan unveiled, like the space colony arc, like trying to blow up the Earth with a laser. And everything.
But we don't know if he's dead for sure. That's what I heard. I mean, you guys were saying that Jim Carrey didn't want to do this anymore.
I'll get to that in a little bit. Like, I really like that they brought up the whole like blowing up the moon thing. Like it's not as obscene as it is in the game, with like a whole like big explosion and everything. But they
sliced off a good chunk,
slicing off a pretty good chunk of it.
Yeah, I'm like, what is that gonna have as an after effect? It's gonna be awful.
One thing I forgot to add to, the Eggman ringtone. Like his ringtone was his theme from Sonic Adventure 2. I like that.
Yeah.
But
you see, there's so much. It's like it feels like this movie was made by fans, and it was a love letter to the fans, really, because whoever did this, they were really paying attention to the whole history of Sonic, right? And they made sure to put very carefully things that the fans would appreciate in like really good spots. It wasn't gratuitous. They didn't just throw it in just because. It just made sense in little moments, like the ringtone moment. You know what I mean? The music in the background when they were talking to Tom and Maddie.
How they delve into
and those characters too. The restaurant they were in.
Into
what are they called?
Oh, the Chow Garden, the restaurant.
Yeah, that was really cute that they introduced them kind of like at a restaurant. You know, that the chows were included there, and that was kind of funny how they were like bouncing around during the attack. You see like people in suits.
There's so much to say. It feels like I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. But like, with the whole like arc thing, like I really like how they did like Eggman in that part. Because in the games too, like he does sort of realize at this point, like my grandfather is insane. Like he's really willing to kill us all. Like I never wanted to go that far.
Yeah.
I wanted to conquer the world.
I don't want to get rid of Earth.
So he does like try to help on the arc to like stop it. I feel like they went even deeper into that here. Like he feels like he makes more of an effort because he actually fights Gerald directly. He's like, you betrayed me, basically. Like, I looked up to you. Like, you're my grandfather. I find out you're trying to, like, destroy the whole world and use me, basically.
Yeah, in that moment when he says, you know, you're no Maria, it was really harsh, you know, because he genuinely felt like he recovered family, that he recovered a connection that he didn't even know he needed and he had lost. But
he is a bit of a silly villain, a bit of a silly character. But at the same time, he has his moments. He has depth to him. Yeah. That's something from the games that I'm glad like they incorporated here. That he's not all like
Ivo himself,
the comic relief villain. Yeah.
I was saying too that I also felt that they gave Jim Carrey a little more license to be himself here. Like he was silly in 1 and 2, but there were some moments where I was like, that is such a Jim Carrey thing to do. Like certain gestures of his and little moments. I'm like, I feel like Jim really discussed with the studio, like, hey, give me a little bit more freedom to be silly and be myself. Like, I feel like the dance part was entirely his idea.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it was, but I just think, yeah, how about you give me a little dance number with my grandfather, you know, me, myself, and I, me, myself, and I,
One of the most
I think that was him, you know.
things too of the movie, like surprisingly, like really, really good, like themes. Like it's well, like there's one part where Shadow hurts Tom pretty badly to the point where he puts his life in danger, basically. Sonic gets there and sees him, and he has almost the same like painful reaction that Shadow has to Maria's death.
Yeah, that's why Shadow reacts like that. He sees that it's like a flashback.
That sort of drives Sonic into his own like little revenge thing, where he like pushes everyone away like Tails and Knuckles, and decides like he's got to deal with Shadow by himself.
And he wants the emerald. So
he gets the Master Emerald so he can turn Super and go deal with him.
Right. That's what it's called, Super, when he turns gold.
Super Sonic, yeah. And Shadow does the same thing. Basically knocks the Chaos Emerald out.
And I didn't realize that was a thing, because I saw some animations, and I'm like, Sonic does look like white and red. Like, he does turn kind of like white.
Shadow turns more white, I'd say. Sonic is like yellow.
Sonic is,
like
gold.
it's supposed
That's why it was nice to see, like, almost like a gold and like a pink beam going through the sky, because Shadow's like white and red, so he would look kind of pinkish, and I'm like, it was cool to see them speeding off together.
I thought that was really cool, because it's Sonic sort of like giving into anger and like basically becoming like Shadow.
And
because
he
that's
still
what
had
Shadow
teamwork with Shadow, though, you know? Like,
if Sonic were alone, he would have ended up the same way.
And they say that in the beginning.
That's really important. Yeah.
They say that in the beginning, like, Shadow is basically what Sonic would have been had he not had, like, you know, good people with him, or lost everything, you know? They don't exactly say it that way, but they basically allude to that from the beginning. Like, Shadow is Sonic, but, you know.
Shadow basically tells him, like,
he lost everything. He lost the really important
You went against what your friends, like what the people important to you told you to do in the name of revenge. Like, it's not easy to resist. It's not easy to resist, is it?
Yeah.
Like, he basically tells them in that moment.
Like, now you understand me a little bit,
we're in the same boat.
Yeah. And it's true, you know, it's easy to get angry, and hate is easy. Anger and revenge is easy. What's not easy to do is, you know, with all the pain and the suffering that you've gone through, especially this day and age, for like, I'm not trying to teach a lesson here, but there is a lot going on in the world, and it's difficult to like bring yourself down to a point where like, should I be living my life full of hate and revenge, or should I, you know, really grasp what's really important and what matters around me? And I think he had that really big moment where he was like, you know, my family and my friends and my team are more important than this anger that I'm feeling right now.
He remembers what Tom told him, like, closer to the beginning of the movie. Like, don't let your anger consume you, basically. Don't let it change who you are.
Yeah.
Like, don't let it change your heart.
And they did a very, like, cool, like, momentary close-up of, you know, like, the heart part, you know, like, that kind of, like, made Sonic snap out of it.
And Sonic remembers that, he, like, snaps out of it. He's like, what am I doing? I'm becoming him, basically.
And it's so easy to slip into that. Right.
To him and Shadow having like that whole meaningful like conversation like on the moon about like Shadow like coming to terms with Maria's loss and like realizing that he can still find
and I love how they went back to that conversation that he had with Maria under
where
the stars up there. The stars, you know, basically the stars are dead, but the light still remains, you know, and Shadow made the connection, like, you know, even in darkness, like the light is what still remains.
Even though Maria's gone, like.
So she might be a star that might be gone, but her light still shines. I thought that was so beautiful.
Because there are so many like stars in the sky that are already dead, that are just like so far away, we still see the light.
Like that was some good writing.
That was a really cool like message.
Yeah, the writing all in all of this movie was really good, you know, and you can get caught up in like live adaptations of video games and anime with, you know, like, oh, this is like a little pop culture thing and it can be lighthearted, but when they send like messages to connect with people, like that, it's what makes a movie work.
The parallels between
It
Sonic
makes a
and
movie
Shadow
work.
are like really like awesome,
Yeah.
honestly. Like Maria
And it
basically
was one of the core things of the movie, I think.
Maria basically told Shadow the same thing that
Yeah.
Tom told Sonic.
How easy it can be
Like,
to like lose yourself when you're grieving and then lost.
Yourself,
right.
Basically. And that's sort of what snaps Shadow out of it and brings us basically into the coolest scene of the movie, which is like an iconic part of the game, like the whole final boss battle with Live and Learn playing.
Yeah.
Where the both of them are like super in space, like fighting together. Sonic
right, they did have that theme Live and Learn, you said, right?
That was awesome. I'm really happy that they did that they included that, because that is one of the most iconic video game moments of all time.
Yeah.
And the way they built up to it felt so natural and really good.
Yeah.
Like,
and then, you know,
awesome.
This kind of wasn't a surprise because I was expecting him to be alive. I was hoping. I'm like, because I looked at you, I'm like, they didn't kill him off, did they? Like the whole explosion at the end, but they did have the credit scene where they showed his sneakers. So I guess he is coming back for another movie. Does that mean Keanu signed on?
When the arc blows up, like the way it happens is a little bit different than in the game.
But I'm guessing with the super speed, he just zoomed out of there.
In the game, the arc doesn't really blow up. Like, it's more so like, I forget exactly what it is, but the laser, I think, like, Shadow absorbed that into his body, basically. So that's what made him, like, fall down to Earth and presumably die at that point. At least that's what you think at that point.
But he just basically gets zapped into another place, right? Into another realm?
Kind of. Anyway, in the games, in Sonic Adventure 2, he doesn't die, but here, at least the implication is that he does. In the game, after they stop the whole, like, death ray and all of that, like, they all